day that changed the world. Background and planning of the attack. The September 11, 2001 terrorist attack was one of the most devastating events in modern history. Before it was carried out, the attack was carefully planned by members of the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden. Al-Qaeda had previously shown hostility toward the United States, including the 1998 bombing of American embassies in Africa and the 2000 attack on the USS Cole in Yemen. However, the September 11th plot would be much more complex and lethal. The planning began years earlier, in the late 1990s, when Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the chief architect of the attack, presented the idea to Osama bin Laden. The proposal involved hijacking commercial airliners and using them as weapons to target symbols of American power and influence. Bin Laden approved the plan and provided financial and logistical support for its execution. In the months leading up to the attack, the 19 hijackers were recruited and trained. They infiltrated the United States, living as ordinary citizens and attending flight schools to learn how to fly planes. The operation required meticulous coordination and discreet communication to remain below the radar of intelligence agencies. The day of the attack, September 11, 2001. On the morning of September 11, 2001, the 19 hijackers boarded 4 commercial flights departing from different airports in the United States. These planes were chosen because they were large and loaded with enough fuel for long trips, which would increase the destruction caused on impact. American Airlines Flight 11, the first hijacked plane, took off from Boston at 7:59 a.m., bound for Los Angeles. At 8:46 a.m., it crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. The impact was devastating, piercing the tower between the 93rd and 99th floors and starting an uncontrollable fire. United Airlines Flight 175. The second plane also departed from Boston bound for Los Angeles. At 9:03 a.m., it crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center, between floors 77 and 85. The crash was broadcast live on several TV stations, shocking the entire world. American Airlines Flight 77. The third plane took off from Washington Dulles bound for Los Angeles. At 9:37 a.m., it hit the Pentagon, headquarters of the U.S. Department of Defense in Arlington, Virginia, causing a massive fire and killing 125 people in the building, as well as the 64 passengers on board. United Airlines Flight 93. The fourth plane, which departed from Newark, New Jersey, bound for San Francisco, had a different fate. The passengers, upon learning of the attacks in New York and the Pentagon, fought the hijackers in an attempt to regain control of the plane. This heroic action resulted in the flight crashing into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, at 10:03 a.m., preventing the plane from reaching its original target, believed to be the Capitol or the White House in Washington, D.C. During the attack, chaos and destruction. The impact of the planes on the Twin Towers caused intense fires and catastrophic structural damage. Temperatures inside the buildings exceeded 1,000 degrees Celsius, weakening the steel structures and causing the South Tower to collapse at 9:59 a.m., less than an hour after impact. The North Tower collapsed at 10:28 a.m. Both collapses released a massive cloud of dust and debris that covered much of Manhattan, causing panic and confusion among those trying to escape. The scene in New York was one of pure terror. Thousands of people were trapped on the upper floors of the towers, some choosing to jump to their deaths rather than be consumed by the flames. Firefighters, police, and rescue workers rushed to the scene, risking their lives to save those still trapped in the buildings. At the Pentagon, the impact of the third plane caused significant destruction and a fire that took hours to control. The collapse of a portion of the building intensified the chaos and the concern that more attacks could occur. The immediate aftermath and the U.S. response. Shortly after the attacks, all commercial flights were suspended over U.S. territory, an unprecedented event in U.S. history. Airspace was closed and military fighter jets were placed on standby to intercept any suspicious aircraft. The country was on high alert. President George W. Bush, who was visiting a school in Florida, was informed of the attacks and immediately evacuated to ensure his safety. At 8:30 p.m., he delivered a speech to the nation, promising to find those responsible and bring justice to the victims. The U.S. response was swift and severe. On October 7, 2001, less than a month after the attack, the United States, along with its allies, launched Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan to overthrow the Taliban regime, which was harboring Osama bin Laden and other al-Qaeda members. Long-term impacts. The consequences of the September 11 attacks were profound and long-lasting. War on terror. The attack led the United States to declare a war on terror, which included prolonged military interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq, as well as counterterrorism operations around the world. Homeland Security. The U.S. government created the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and implemented new security policies, such as the Patriot Act, which expanded the surveillance powers of government agencies. Airport security was tightened, permanently changing the way air travel is conducted. Economic impact. The damage caused by the destruction of the Twin Towers and the temporary shutdown of the financial market led to billions in economic losses. Businesses were destroyed and thousands of people lost their jobs. The U.S. economy took years to recover. Social and cultural divides. Increased fear and surveillance have led to a rise in xenophobia and prejudice, particularly against Muslim and Arab communities in the United States and other Western countries. Memorials and commemorations. In 2006, a temporary memorial was unveiled at the site of the World Trade Center. In 2011, 10 years after the attack, the National September 11 Memorial and Museum opened to the public, honoring the nearly 3,000 victims of the attack and the hundreds of first responders who lost their lives. Legacy and Reflections. September 11, 2001, was a watershed moment in world history. It redefined international relations, global security, and domestic politics in the United States. For many, the day is remembered for the heroism of rescue workers, global solidarity, and the resilience of the American people. However, it has also brought to the forefront discussions about the limits of national security and the impact of counterterrorism policies on civil and human rights. Today, more than 2 decades after the attack, the world is still feeling the effects of September 11th, both in security policies and in the memories and mourning of those affected by the tragedy. It is a day that will never be forgotten, a day that forever changed the course of history. Jesus bless all the people killed in a cruel way without defense. Ogumma, a bloody day that the world will never forget. Jesus bless all the people killed in a cruel way without defense. Ogumma, a bloody day that the world will never forget.